And on my right, I have our first presenter, Shafa Tasneem. And then on my left, next to our discussant, is Najmul Sakin from BUP. And finally, we have Dr. Shobha from the University of Chittagong. And also online, we have Sheila Mishra from India, from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, uh, better known as IIT Kanpur. So thank you so much, all of you, for being here today. This session on gender equality and development is the third one that we are having in this conference. We had one earlier today, and we had another one yesterday. So obviously, a lot of work is being done on gender that we've had to have 3 sessions, and that's really heartening to know. Now, before we begin the presentation, just a brief introduction that this gender equality is not really a woman's only issue. It's an issue that has ramifications for the entire society. Gender stereotypes, they have a negative impact on all genders, not only on women, but also on men, right? So a society that promotes gender equality is a society that has good education, good health, prosperity, productivity, efficiency, teamwork. They work together, civic engagement. In general, these are all the hallmarks of good, successful, sustainable development. Now, in Bangladesh, as in many other parts of the world, we have a 50-50, almost a 50-50 gender ratio, male-female ratio, right? So if we are not able to ensure gender equality, that means we are not being able to adequately tap the potential of 50% of the population. And that is a big loss for us because we want to maximize our development. Every country does. But for us, it is particularly important because we are slated to become a middle-income country in 2026. And if we want to expedite that path, then this is a huge potential that we are not being able to tap, right? So it's all this research that is going on gender equality and development, it's very pertinent, very important, because we want to find out what are the pathways through which we can, penetrate that barrier of gender inequality and have a society which is more equal. So, it's very important that we have research like this and we continue with that. So, I think without further ado, we open up the floor for our presenters, and let's see they'll share their findings with us, and I'm sure we have a lot to learn from them. So, our first presenter is Shafa Tasneem, a research associate at SANEL, and Shafa is going to present on the effect of WASH on women empowerment, evidence from rural Bangladesh. Right? Okay, Shafa, the floor is yours.
Can I take a moment?
Yes, sure.
Good afternoon, everyone. The topic that I'm going to talk about today is impact of WASH facilities on women empowerment, empirical evidence from rural Bangladesh. WASH actually stands for water, sanitation, and hygiene. It's a pretty basic need, right? But what we have seen all over the years that lack of infrastructure has costed the women, especially rural women, the most. It takes away their allocated time for earning and learning. So it affects their time allocation and limit their participation in the labor market as well. So what lack of WASH facilities can do, we can see obtaining water from distant places is one of the most burdened work women are pressured to obtain the water from distant places in most of the Bangladeshi households. Around 90% of the labor for gathering water falls on women and girls. It takes away their time and learning opportunities as well. So they're not being able to join the formal labor market. It also causes gender-based violence for while collecting the water from a long distance in the during the commute, as well as not having a proper, well facilitated or gender segregated washroom in the schools, uh, call, increases the absenteeism or uh, challenge female children's accessibility of basic needs as well. So if there's lack of education, so girls are also losing their decision making agency as well. Now, if we look at the worldwide and Bangladeshi scenario, there is lack of access to safe drinking water or hand washing facilities or open defecation is also there. So there is a long way to go. In case of Bangladesh, lack access to improved drinking water sources, the statistics is pretty well. Around 97.6% of the population have access to improved drinking water source. However, around only 45% of the rural households have improved toilet facilities, and there is prevalence of open defecation as well. The motivation that work behind this work is gender equality and access to clean water and sanitation is both are the big major sustainable development goals, as well as although WAS and women empowerment is talked about in the whole development scenario, there is very little empirical studies on this. So that was really the main motivation. Some of the major studies say that uh, for Bangladesh or for developing countries, proper access to wash facilities not only develop their decision-making authority intra-household scenario, it also develops their extra-household decision-making as well, as they are participating more in social decision-making. Uh, in Guatemalan's Malan's savings group, women demonstrated equal or even greater involvement in decision making related to WAS compared to their husbands as well. Uh, so the research questions that I have is: do women become empowered when they have control over the resources to meet their WAS needs? How do WAS availability factors and accessibility factors impact the women empowerment? And how does what is the relationship between the socioeconomic and demographic characteristics with women empowerment? To conduct the study, the data source that I have taken is Bangladesh Integrated Household Survey, BIHS. I've taken the last two rounds of the survey because the independent variable that have taken the index was availability and was accessibility index. Some of the questions were not there in the first round of the survey. To conduct the survey, the dependent variable was women empowerment index. It's a combination of the index was mainly followed by the Simon Bidisha and Abdul Razak's study on 2012. It has 8 indicators, including mobility, spending decisions, or ownership of assets, involvement in household decision, etc. And for independent variables, the main two independent variables are wash availability and wash accessibility. Availability generally indicates the major thing, that is access to water supply or toilet facilities, whether they are available or not. For accessibility, it's mainly the time taken to access water or the location or the distance and time mostly. For this, the approach by Saroj and team was taken, which was done in India for measuring the household and wash facilities was followed. Uh, for the methodology, panel fixed effect model was used. With the Hausman test and everything, panel effects was seeming more appropriate. And for after doing the heteroscedasticity test, robust standard errors were taken. If we look at the empowerment in uh, four categories, we have seen that the part who were the women who were already more empowered, they have gotten more empowered from 2015 to 2018, but the situation has worsened for women with lesser empowerment earlier. So they have become less empowered now. For In different categories, that mostly there has been positive change. Now, if we look at women empowerment with wash availability, we have seen that from 2015 to 2018, the situation has gotten better. So, if women are given proper wash facilities, their empowerment in almost every sector gets better. Uh, Now, if we look at the econometric analysis, we can see that due to oh, was availability around 0.0426 gets better with was availability. Women empowerment gets better. Female education did not have any was not found significant in this study. However, women working in the farming or salaried work had some effect, had some positive effect. Uh, Female age and monthly expenditure of the household also worked as a was correlated was with women empowerment. Uh, Household size and the household head's occupation and education and sex also has a positive impact on women empowerment. One of the major limitations of these studies, there's presence of confounding variables. So, what is the true relationship between WASH practices and women empowerment? That can be obscured a little bit because the cultural norms and societal attitudes can influence both the accessibility and availability of WASH infrastructure as well as women empowerment. So, the specific effects might not be properly studied in this case. Um, so wash availability is a very basic need, and it is needed for the empowerment of any gender, irrespective of male and female. Especially since the women in our country is suffering more for this facility, so it can provision of wash services is crucial in the fight for gender equality, of course. For these, what can be done, I think, is government and relevant stakeholders can increase the investment in this area, but there can be targeted programs for specific needs and challenges. Other than that, community-based awareness has already been proven to be more helpful in these kind of cases. So community-based awareness and education campaigns can work as well. There should be proper monitoring and evaluation. Otherwise, no projects or no steps are actually implemented effectively in a way. Uh, Thank you.
All right, thank you, Shafa. Indeed, actually, WASH, we tend to sort of uh, belittle it. We don't think it's so important. But indeed, it is extremely important because many women around the world spend an inordinately large amount of time procuring water, wanting to use hygienic facilities, sanitation, etc. And we've seen, how if you provide wash proper wash facilities, water, sanitation, clean drinking water facilities, it really saves up a lot of women's energy and time, which they can devote for gaining education and for gainful employment, right? So thank you, Shafa, for that interesting presentation. I was given a piece of paper with some instructions about timings, which I forgot to mention. But Shafa did pretty good, actually. Each presenter gets 10 minutes. So for four presenters, we have 40 minutes. And then we have 15 minutes for discussion. And then we have another 15 minutes to take up question answers or any feedback from the audience. And then finally, I will wind up. So our next presenter, Najmud Saqib, from Bangladesh University of Professionals. And Najmud is presenting on factors affecting the violence against women, evidence from rural violence.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much, Sanem and Bragg, for organizing this wonderful conference. Today, I'm going to present one of my paper is factors affecting the violence against women, evidence from rural Bangladesh. We all know about the women violence term, and we see how much accurate this one is nowadays. So let's see why this one is much more important throughout the world and in Bangladesh as well. So we see a study in 2005, analysis of 80 surveys in 50 countries found that more than 50% of married or intimate partner-related women have experienced physical violence, and we see that violence against women is prevalent globally, with up to 38% of homicide being committed by intimate partners, with prevalence rates ranging from 10 to 60%, and this has been much increasing throughout the time, even in the COVID time. If we talk about the Bangladesh context, we see that Bangladeshi women face a high prevalence of domestic violence, with 66% experiencing such incidents, yet 72% avoid sharing their experiences. Which one is most important thing? That most of the women we see, they might face the challenges, they might face the violence, but usually they don't disclose it due to few reasons. So we try to find out the underlying factors why they are not focusing on it, even why they are experiencing this sector these problems, but why they are not sharing these problems. The research objectives. The study explores the characteristics and consequences of domestic violence against women residing in rural Bangladesh, and it focuses on asserting the socioeconomic status of women, perpetuating factors, determining the underlying rationales and types of violence in rural Bangladesh. If we see some literature review, we see that the educational attainment of a husband uh, serves as a safeguard against domestic violence solely in rural region, provided that the husband has received education that surpasses secondary level. That's from men's perspective. If we see from women's perspective, another study has said that at least 6 years of education is needed for a women that might mitigate the violation. If we see another study, Rahman, a study of 14,557 married women in Bangladesh found that younger and less educated women are at higher risk of experiencing intimate partner violence. So we see that uh, their less education and child marriage has also a relationship with the violence. We talked about the lack of awareness about legal rights. Around 50% of women choose not to report instances infringement on their rights, and we see another study has shown that acceptability of violence. Rural women often experience child since their childhood physical abuse and neglect, which is further accelerated societal normalization of violence. So they face this kind of problem, but they don't usually disclose. If we say about the financial inclusion, Hassan and Malik talked about in their paper, and this paper indicates that the frequency of domestic violence against women in household borrowing from microcredit institution decreases as women membership duration increases. So if they have the financial inclusion, we see the less prone and this probability of this domestic violence. And if we talk about the natural disasters, and we see the uh, Bangladesh is a mostly a natural calamities prone country. So natural calamities has aggravated pre-existing risk factors associated with domestic violence by intensifying feelings of hopelessness and uh, accentuated the sense of losing authority over the safety and welfare of one's family. So this uncertainty also have the men's mind, and they might go the through they skip it through the violence. And some preferences, we see that 93% experiences a preference of having male child and whom they considered a valuable addition in household and the nation. So the methodology, the present study employs data from Bangladesh Integrated Household Survey 2015 and data source from IFPRI. And the study employed a multivariate logistic regression model to conduct the regression analysis. And given that the dependent variable was binary in nature, with a value of 1 indicating the presence of violence and a value 0 indicating its absence. Uh, if we see the where this occurrence occurred most, we say that husband's house is in the peak time, and that's almost 76.8, which is physical, and 73.8% psychological, and 45.5% is sexual. So if we see the trend, we see mostly they face the violence in their husband's house. If we see about the various forms of domestic violence in different divisions in Bangladesh, we see it Rajshahi, this one is highest, almost 97%. And we categorize the violence in 4 categories, which one is verbal violence, physical violence, controlling behavior, and economic violence. So most of the time we see that economic violence and the controlling behavior is the mostly predominant in this sector. If we see the pairwise correlations, we see the physical violence and the verbal violence has 43%. Both are interconnected. Controlling behavior and verbal violence has 17%, and economic violence and common controlling behavior is almost 33%, which is more significant. So we try to find out the correlations among the pattern of the violences. And if we say about the logistic regression analysis, that is one of the most important thing, that age of women has the odd ratio of 2.67%. And we see that the child marriage has significantly important in the sector. But over the time, age square women shows that whenever the women age is more than 30 or 32, the level of violence is decreasing. So certainly at their own age, whenever they are mostly immature, the violence is most dominant. And we say that poultry farming has the odd ratio of 1.17%, and total land 0.99% and 998%. So their economic conditions, their land accumulation has always a negative relation with the violence we see. And the most important thing is work in rural areas. So which one is 9.4% and most significant. So we might see that there might be a uncertainty of in rural area works for men, and there is no legal framework in rural areas that create might more violent. And women decisions in agriculture sector, so whenever women have the decision making power, so we see the negative relations in violence. So if we talk about the discussion part, it shows that mature women exhibit a greater propensity to remain in a committed relationship for an extended durations, and despite their early marriage, limited level of maturity and education renders them significantly dependent on other. And we see that the poultry farming industry exhibits a ratio of 1.17, which appears to have have an impact on this incident of violence against women. And we see the families possesses larger land holdings exhibit a decreased likelihood of being targeted by violent act, and the odd ratio is 0.988. The ownership of land confers the economic stability and empowerment. And finally, we say that this study shows that women are more likely to experience domestic violence when their partners are employed in rural areas. In this instance, the highest value, 9.438%. Rural employees typically encounter inadequate compensation and a lack of defined work framework or oversight the mechanism. And women who possesses decision-making authority in their agriculture productions process are subjected to a lower incidence of violence, which is almost 0.98%. And females are significantly engaged in agricultural sector and leading whenever they have this financial inclusion and decision-making process, they are more likely in domestic violence. Thank you so much for giving your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Najmul Sakib. Interesting how education as little as 6 years can reduce violence against women. I also wonder why poultry, is getting attacked. But we'll have a further discussion by Dr. Khalik on that. Let's move on to our third presentation by Dr. Shoma Thar from the University of Chittagong. And Dr. Shoma will present on economic development and women's empowerment, an empirical test of U-shaped hypothesis in Bangladesh.
Very good afternoon to one and all. Sorry, I'm very sorry. I have a sore throat. I cannot talk properly.
Okay.
I'm Dr. Shoma Dhar, recently obtained my PhD from Department of Economics at the Economic University of Chittagong. And my co-author is Dr. Tapul Sharkar, a professor of finance at the University of Southern Queensland, Australia. Today, I'm going to present a study on the economic development and women's empowerment and empirical test of U-shaped hypothesis in Bangladesh. These are the outlines. Now the introduction part. So women's empowerment is an important driver of economic development, and economic development and women's empowerment are strongly correlated. To demonstrate the impact of economic development on women's empowerment, the U-shaped hypothesis is the prime test because the U-shaped hypothesis denotes the trade-off between female labor force participation rate, which indicates the women's economic empowerment, and a GDP per capita, which is the proxy of economic development. The study aims to investigate whether Bangladesh exhibits the U-shaped hypothesis or not, and using the annual time series data from 1991 to 2022, which will ensure a long-term relationship between economic development and female labor force participation rate. If we look back to the literature review, we can come to know that in 1967, Jane Sinha, who first proposed the U-shaped hypothesis between the female labor force participation rate and economic development, the author stated that development should have a converse effect on the female labor participation rate. And as economics grow, female labor participation rate initially drops and then increases. And with this proposition in 1995, Claudia Goldin stated that in the early stages of economic development, the income effect predominates over the substitution effect on the dropping component of the U shape, but the substitution effect predominates on the rising hub. And coming to the empirical review, globally, so many researchers tested the impact of economic development on women's empowerment. Someone concluded the negative relationship, and someone concluded the positive relationship. But for Bangladesh perspective, very little researchers estimated this relationship, the empirical tested. In 2003, the author Mahmoud stated that the usual relationship between economic growth and female levels of participation rate Bangladesh does not fit because there is a not U-shape, it's a inverted U-shape exists in Bangladesh. But in 2016, Hussain shows that a quadratic U-shaped level for supply function for women in Bangladesh exists. This is a real picture of U-shaped relationship. You can see that when economic growth, then women labor force participation, first of all, literally decrease. And after that, the labor force participation rate then increases. Now the empirical part, the study used three methodologies. In first methodology, we generated a scatter plot to find out the relationship between female levels of participation rate and GDP per capita. To take the theory of Goldin, 1955 is the Goldin's theory. In that case, here we took female levels of participation rate as dependent variable. And independent variable, we took GDP per capita. We took also natural log of GDP per capita and quantitative value or natural log of GDP per capita as independent variables. And you can see that here there is no U-shaped hypothesis, U-shaped curve in Bangladesh, rather an upward pattern. Rather an upward pattern, and sometimes there is the inverted U. There's some pattern also inverted pattern or inverted U shape. But it is a matter of pride that there is a positive relationship between economic development and economic empowerment. The correlation is very high, 0.98. It's a very good sign. Now the methodology two, and here the study used two models. In model one, there is a multiple irrigation model. In that case, the dependent variable is female labor force participation rate, and the independent the natural log of GDP per capita, and the qualitative value of natural log of GDP per capita. The recognition result, you can see that the all T values are significant, but natural log of GDP per capita T values are negatively significant, but quadratic value of GDP per capita is positively significant, which satisfy the usual hypothesis. Now, model two, in this case, we added fertility rate as in the equation 2 as a control variable. You can see again the distribution results. Here also all variables, all independent variables are significant, but natural log of GDP per capita and fertility rate are negatively significant. Only quadratic value of GDP natural log of GDP per capita is positively significant, which also satisfy the usual hypothesis. In methodology 3, we further proceed the estimation of equation 2. And then we, because these are the time series that we use in time series data. So we have to test the stationary test. And in this regard, We used augmented unipolar test and Phillips Baron test, and all tests here you can see the all tests are integrated with the I1. That means the variables become stationary after taking first difference. And if since the all variables are in same order, integrated with the same order, so we can test the co-integration test with the Johansson co-integration test, and you can see that the results are there are three log run relationships with all variables. And now we can see what is the long run relationship between the variables. And you can see that here's the results, the long run relationships are nature log of GDP by here is the positive and quantitative value is the negative. But ultimately the results will be reversed. And here, in practice, the result will be natural log of GDP it will be negative, and the quantitative value of natural log of the GDP per capita will be positive. So the discussion part in model 1, we can see that natural log of GDP per capita negative significant to female labor force participation rate, and natural log of quantitative value of natural log of GDP per capita positive is significant to female labor force participation rate, so which satisfy the usual hypothesis. And in model 2 also, natural log of GDP per capita and female fertility rates are negatively significant to female labor force participation rate. Only quantitative value of natural log of GDP per capita is positively significant for female labor force participation rate, which also satisfy the usual hypothesis. And another discussion about the unit 2 results indicates that all variables are indicated by 1. That means with the first difference. And Johansson said it indicates that the female levels of participation is co-integrated with the long GDP per capita and quantitative value of GDP per capita and fertility rate. The results indicate that independent variables are both co-integrated, have a long run relationship, and the trace test results show that there are 3 long run equilibrium relations of the variables. So the numerous micro macro factors have an impact on the female labor participation rate, and increasing the engagement of women in the labor force has been crucial in generating the demographic dividend and the accelerating economic growth. And both model 1, model 2 results satisfy the usual hypothesis, but the scatter plot does not show a U-shape, rather in upward trending pattern. And according to model 2 regression results, natural log and fertility rate are negatively impact to female labor participation, only quantitative value positively significant. And the methodology also show that the 1% increase in the quantitative value of GDP per capita results in long run 28% increase in the favorable labor force participation rate. And these are the references. Thank you very much. I'm extremely sorry for my questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shoma, for your very interesting presentation. It's good to, it's nice to know that, women, after having some teething problems, as you progress along the path of development, they enter white collar jobs and contribute in the economic development. About that scatter plot, maybe if you had taken longer data.
The 91 to 2000.
Yeah, so maybe if we had data
22 years.
70s or 60s,
yeah, maybe you share. Maybe you share.
Anyway, our last presentation, it's an online presentation by Sheila Mishra from IIT Kanpur. Sheila, you there with us?
Yeah, hello.
Okay, Sheila, the floor is yours now.
Thank you. So is my screen visible? Hello?
Show the play card. You have to try hard.
Hello? Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you. So, hello everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to present my findings on this paper titled Intimate Partner Violence and Patrilocal Marriages in India. Now, In this study, I basically asked, do women living in their husband's natal households experience greater domestic violence? Under this, I further pursue that gender and age of the household heads are associated with the risk of intimate partner violence in the household. Moreover, moreover, a woman's exposure to parental violence in their childhood might have some linkages with the intimate partner violence. Furthermore, I also examine whether decision making power or the justification of husbands or partners beating and ownership of asset affect the occurrence of intimate partner violence reported by the women. Thereafter, I also examine whether access to technology reduces intimate partner violence, and this access to technology could be in the form of access to mobile phones or the internet usage by them. Now, the basic premise on the basis of which I'm pursuing this study is that while existing narratives often portray elderly patriarchs as the main influencers in the three-generation household for any kind of violence inside home, however, gender disparities in marriage age or life expectancy and even higher male mortality has resulted in more older women than men in the household. So, for feminist scholars, the home is a key location of political and economic interchange, and they have contested the public-private distinction, where they have included the role of disagreements, negotiations, and cooperations, and the power balance. So, in so. In the current study with this premise, I'm studying intimate partner violence. So why in the Indian context? So most research on domestic violence or intimate partner violence revolves around domestic violence in nuclear households, where the perpetrator is generally the man and the victim is the wife or partner. In my study, I'm widening the definition of intimate partner violence by including emotional violence, sexual violence, severe violence, physical violence, and humiliation. And I'm trying to look at how do any other married woman's reporting of intimate partner violence differs from daughter-in-law in the household. Now, in India, in India, it is considered as a criminal offense and it's punishable under Section 498A of the Indian Penal Code. However, despite economic growth, NFHS 2000 and NFHS 5 reported that approximately 30% of ever married women aged 15 to 49% reported any form of physical or sexual violence by their current and former spouses. Now, in the study, I'd be employing National Family Health Survey 2019-20, and the focus is primarily on women who were selected in the domestic violence module. In my study, there are 60,790 women, out of which 23.62% are daughter-in-law in the household, and 76.38% are other married women, but not daughter-in-law. Now, the methodology that I've pursued in the study is the logistic regression, and uh, given the constraint of time, the majority of the respondents in NFHS 5, um, as I mentioned, were daughter-in-law as compared to other married women, and 7.9%, 9.1% of the daughter-in-law and 5% of other married women disclosed experiencing severe violence from their husbands or partners. Moreover, 5.54% of daughter-in-law and 4% of other married women reported experiencing sexual violence by their husbands or partner. Emotional violence was also reported by 12.59% of daughter-in-law and 10% by other married women. Now, going to the regression results directly. Uh, so, yeah. So we find so in this so in the logistic regressions, in addition to the variables mentioned on the screen, like whether the sister was residing with the women with the daughter-in-law or the married woman, whether she has experienced any kind of child death in the past, whether the husband drinks, whether she has witnessed any kind of parental abuse in the in her childhood. Moreover, I've also included who makes the decision about household income, whether the head of the family is female, what is the age of the female head, whether the woman is a currently employed person, whether she watches movie, whether she has mobile phone. I've also included internet usage. Moreover, in addition to this, I have added asset ownership variables like land ownership and household ownership, and also some variables on social norms, and lastly whether she justifies beating by her husband or not. So I find that being a daughter-in-law is associated with a lower likelihood of experiencing sexual violence, severe violence, and physical violence compared to other married women not residing with in-laws. Moreover, I also find that women who have undergone abortions are more likely to report sexual violence, severe violence, and physical violence. In contrast, women who have had stillbirths are less likely to report sexual violence. In addition to that, we find that women whose husbands drink are highly likely to experience intimate partner violence of any kind. In addition to that, I also find the role of childhood trauma in the form of parental abuse, that women who have witnessed parental abuse in their childhood are more likely to report sexual violence or emotional violence. Talking about the decision making in the income, I find that when both the partners have a say in the husband's income, then women are less likely to experience humiliation. However, when the husband alone or any other household member in the family decides about husband's income, women are more likely to experience severe violence and physical violence. Furthermore, if the head of the family is a female, then women are more likely to report physical violence compared to households where the head of the household is a male. In addition to that, the role of technology also comes into play here, where the ownership of mobile phones is associated with a lower likelihood of physical violence, and internet usage is associated with a lower likelihood of severe violence, physical violence, and even humiliation. As far as the asset ownership is concerned, if a woman alone owns the house, there's a higher chance of reporting severe violence. However, when the home is owned by both the partners, I find that there's a reduced association with the emotional and severe violence. Talking about the other asset ownership variable, which is land ownership, I find that if the land is just owned by the woman, by a married woman, she's less likely to report physical violence. Talking about the stringent social norms, so in my study, the respondents were asked on various categories the kind of social norms they have, and I find that stricter social norms and gender norms are associated with a higher likelihood of intimate partner violence, regardless of its form. So, and last but not the least, if a woman justifies violence in the home, then she's more likely to witness any kind of violence any kind of violence I have considered in the analysis, like either if so she justifying any kind of violence would increase would have a higher association with sexual violence, emotional violence, severe violence, physical violence, and humiliation. Now, overall, based on the findings, following policy implications are framed, which are that policy should acknowledge the potentially protective role of living with in-laws, as women in such arrangements are less likely to experience various forms of intimate partner violence. Since there is a role of child death in women's likelihood of witnessing intimate partner violence, through this study, we also propose that programs should provide support and resources to women who have undergone abortions, with respect to mental health as well. Moreover, since alcohol abuse was also found in our study, we propose that interventions targeting alcohol abuse should also be there, and should also be promoted, and the efficacy of such schemes should also be examined. Since we also find the role of technology access, we propose that initiatives that increase access to mobile phones and the internet could contribute to reducing physical violence, severe violence, and humiliation. Moreover, since the empowerment decision, like the asset ownership and the land ownership, also has a significant association with intimate partner violence, we promote that the schemes where the registration of the property in the name of women is there, the efficiency of those schemes should also be examined in light of the intimate partner violence. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I'm really looking forward to your comments, because this is for the first time presenting these findings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheila, for your very interesting study. It's a difficult study to do and not often talked about topic. And it's good that you've come up with such interesting findings. In fact, it's really sad that how deeply entrenched norms, cultures can sort of lend some sort of an acceptability to violence against women. And I believe education is a very strong tool to break through those dogmatic things that perpetuate violence against women. So now, thank you very much to all the four presenters for your very interesting presentations. Now the floor is for Dr. Mohammed Abdul Khalik. He will discuss the papers.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thanks to the paper presenters. And also to share information with the chairs. I'm the first student of in my department, so this is my pleasure to sit with them. So, so there are four papers presented by the four presenters, and you know, uh, they have discussed major four development issues like domestic violence, development, gender equality, labor force participation, women empowerment, like this. And you see, all the presenters have used some numbers. I think there's numbers violence. So they have used quantitative models and the others to analyze the social behavior. So I will go through by from paper one and then to paper four. Is all right. So paper one was about the impact of waste facilities on women empowerment and legal evidence from rural Bangladesh. So first of all, the paper used panel data. So I have used model. So I think she has used panel logic model. Yeah, right. So okay. So quantitatively, the four papers is very her paper. She has tried to show the relationship between wash and women empowerment. So she has mentioned some literature used on measuring empowerment and measuring wash. But one thing is important to show the causal relationship. So how these two variables are correlated. Is there any evidences on those relationships? So this literature is partly missing. So that should be covered. Okay. So how can we interlink these two variables? How wash can improve women empowerment, or women empowerment can improve wash facility? So the directions of causality could be different. And I have gone through her paper, so I found that the findings of relationship of variables shifts its significance. Somewhere is significant, somewhere is insignificant. It's implying the measurements has some sort of error, or the results are little bit not stable. So you may think with some variables like you have found the income variables and identify variables insignificant. Partly the variables would be highly correlated and to make it different results. And partly you have mentioned some limitations of your studies, and I think that's nice. You have just clearly mentioned the limitations of the study. And the second paper, factors affecting the violence against women. So that was written by Muhammad Monil Hatta, Islam Saki. So Muhammad Monil Hatta is my friend. So okay, thank you. So that's a good paper as well. So they have tried to know the what factors basically are the major players of the violence, uh, women's violence. So they have mentioned four types of violence: survival, physical, and controlling behavior, and emotional, economic violence. But major issue is, so how have you defined violence? So violence as level and degree of violence. So, it's difficult to model as just a single binary variables whether there is a violence or not. So it overlooks the degree of violence. So better it could use ordered models, ordered results. Okay, so that helps us to know the level of violence and the factors. Okay, so and the third paper that focuses on economic development and women's empowerment and empirical test of U-shaped hypothesis in Bangladesh. So she has tried to uh, investigate the relationship between women empowerment and economic development, particularly through the GDP growth rate. So the major challenge is that showing this relationship between women empowerment, which is in her paper by labor force participations. Look, the main model that she has presented that shows the relationship between labor force participation and GDP per capita. And from the directional perspective, it would be like that labor force participation per majorly contributes per capita income. So the directions of causality again here is missing. So grander causal models that can help you to know the directions of causality, and it's very difficult to conclude such kind of relationship based on only two or three variables. You know, labor force participation is influenced by a lot of factors. We have tried to use one single control variables, which is fertility rate, but other social variables like educations, economic conditions. So that has to be incorporated in the model to conclude whether the pattern is opposite or not. And the fourth model that also has discussed about intimate partners, violence, and pathological marriage in India by Sheila Mishra. So she has also used logic models to identify the factors. So what are the major determinants of domestic violence? So in a nutshell, I would say these four papers are quantitatively sound using various models. They are trying to explain the social variables using quantitative tools and techniques. And there is a diversity of presentations as well. For example, someone has used cross-sectional data to analyze the behavior, someone has used time series data, and someone has used longitudinal data. So here the audience are from different, I think that there are some of them are students, some of them just masters. But this is a good session, I think, because most of the participants are from women's side. So I think they are very much interested to learn about domestic violence and women, gender equality and women empowerment. So I will give the opportunity to the participants to ask the question. So I am saving near around 4 minutes. So I will stop here now. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Abdul Khalid, for being so considerate. So we now have questions or any feedback, opinion from the audience. Uh, just a moment. Again, as per the guidelines that I had gotten, we have a time constraint here. So you can take only 1 minute to pose your question, right? So please introduce yourself, and if you want the question directed to a particular speaker, please indicate that as well.
All right. This is Samina. I'm a student of economics at Jawaharlal University. So my first question is Ms. Shafa Tasir. You use panel data face-to-face model. Have you conducted any cross-sectional refinement test on your data? Because I know that can pose significant problems in the panel data estimation. Then my second question to you is that the index of women empowerment that was constructed for the development variable. I mean, like, is there is possibility of having correlation among the variables that you have used there? Does that pose a significant problem? And like, have you thought about any IV or control variable to tackle for the control impact? And that's all for you. And like, I would like to address the second question to is another second. Regarding the discussion part, that we know that lag variable and decision making can pose significant impact on the IDV. But is the coefficient that we receive, is that does that reduce IDV substantially, or like does it not reduce substantially? And like also as Ma'am have talked about the full free discussion, like through which channel actually this Thank you.
Okay, we take two more questions and then the presenters can answer. And then if we have time, we'll take more. So I think you'd raised your hand before, so go ahead.
Hello. Okay. So I'm Farida from Development Studies DU. So I would like to address my first question to Mr. Sakib. I am curious to know that you have mentioned at some point that poultry farming and general farming and other sorts of employment have some effect on the case. So I would like to know that you said that you put these variables in the economic context, but these sorts of variables are also used for employment or source of income context. So did you consider the situations, and how did you measure the variables in this case? Because I was not really sure about the model that you showed, so I'd like to know about this. And my second question is addressed to Ms. Mishra. So I would like to know the methodology of your research, like what data set you use, because your findings cover a lot of broad categories. So I'd like to know the methodology of your research. Thank you.
And
I am Sadu Rahman. I am pursuing my master's in development studies in University of Dhaka. My question is Shafa Taslim. You have studied about wash facilities. So first, you have used the panel data set. As we know, the panel data set violates time exaggerated problem. So have you introduced any sort of IP or some sort of step flow avoid that type of indigeneity bias? And second, in this particular case, we have sometimes often faced about the reverse causal. So in this particular case, have you ever faced in these types of issues? My second question is words about Mr. Nazmul Sakib. In your study, you said about financial inclusion is less prone to violence against women. But in reality, we can normative discussion, as we can say, in a patriarchal society, still the resource control is still hand over in the male pattern, male headed household. So that's why in these nuances, how you address this part of nuances, and in your data set, there are two types of example, one is male-headed household and number two is female-headed household. So, do you really considering these issues in your study? And third of all, you finding in your particular findings, you say about Russia is the most prone to violence against women. So, in your independent variable, is there any particular geographical location or cultural barrier or cultural factors that you include as an instrumental variable or something to sort of adopt the problem? Thank you.
Okay, Shrafa, would you like to take the questions addressed to you?
To first answer the questions from the honorable discussant, about the literature review regarding correlation between WASH facilities and women empowerment. Use the components that have used for WASH index or women empowerment index. That has a very good correlation with time for obtaining water has a very good correlation with lack of what if more time is needed for to obtain water, then the mobility or the this decision making power also gets there is a hamper there because they cannot join the formal education or something. So their decision making ability hampers there. And there are some other problems as well. So the components of women empowerment or the WASH facilities they have coordination. About the IV, about choosing IV, this is a work in progress. I have thought about it, but I haven't used in the version of them. I think most of the questions are about IV, using IV. So,
okay, thank you. Najmul?
Thank you so much for asking this wonderful question. We in most of the cases you asked about the poultry farming and why integrated. In some sense, whenever we were analyzing the data, we find out that there are some uncertainty in poultry farming and the cooperation with men and women are mostly integrated with this system. That might be an factor that this uncertainty created a pressure to the mainland that emphasizes on mostly on the violence. The second question was about the financial inclusion. You talked about that this financial inclusion may not work in this way, but we have seen that in microcredit systems and other sectors, whenever women have the control over their economy or their income, so we see that they are contributing in their decision making process in the family. So whenever they are involved with this financial inclusion, whenever this money they can expense by themselves, so we see that there are declining process of the violence. And third question was the geographical area you were talking about. So we see that the most of the divisions are closed there, or mostly they are more than 80%. So the differences between the divisions are not that much high. But we see the wrongful division or upside division, these places are high. So there could be correlations with the poverty and the economic status of even the education around attainment. So there might be a few correlation within the. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Sheila, there was a question for you.
Thank you so much for that question, for the clarificatory question on data set and methodology. So, for the purpose of the study, I've employed logistic regression, and the dependent variable is whether a woman reported any kind of violence done by her husband. And these violence, as I mentioned, were emotional violence, severe violence, sexual violence, physical violence, and humiliation. And to examine the determinants, I have included personal characteristics like her age, whether she's the daughter-in-law or just the married woman in the household. What's her education status, employment status, whether she's whether any daughter is residing in the household. I've also included whether she has experienced child death in the past or parental abuse in the family. In addition to that, I've also included household characteristics and socioeconomic characteristics along with social norms and asset ownership. Now, these variables are mostly in the form of binary, and the data set is National Family Health Survey, which is a nationally representative data set of India. And variables are basically binary and categorical. And the data set is interesting in the sense that when we talk about beating by husband or any other variable that talks about social norm or even asset ownership, there are multiple categories. Multiple categories. So yeah, thank you for that question. And yeah.
Okay, thanks. We take another round of questions. Are there any? Is there a microphone?
Everyone, this is Lavanya. I'm a second year student, Department of Economics at University. My question is addressed to both Mr. Nazmi Sakri and Ms. Sila Mishra and Professor papers on environment against women. Can we consider the effects of migration patterns on human balance? For example, how does labor migration or mobility affect the dynamic?
I think that microphone is not working because Sheila cannot hear.
Is it working now?
Is it working now? Yeah. Just repeat the question, please.
My question is addressed to both Mr. Mahmood Saqib and Ms. Sheila Mishra. As both of the papers were violence against women, can we consider the effect of migration patterns on women violence? For example, how does labor migration or mobility affect the dynamic of violence against women in rural communities, both in terms of perpetration and access to support services?
Any more questions? Yeah.
Everyone, I'm Sami Hamasun from I'm lecturing in economics for Breakout University. So my question is to Mr. S.M. Najmul. So you mentioned about the psychological violence. So with psychological violence rate as high like 73.8%. So why there is a tendency to overlook this form of abuse, especially considering the economic and controlling violence against women, compounded by the lack of legal frameworks on gender equality and women's empowerment, and what should be the major concern while implementing the policies on this particular issue?
One, two, three, and the last one. Go there.
I'm Dr. Islam from the IPS. I'm Dr. Islam from the IPS. My question is also to Western Harbour Sector. I want to know that from the data we can see we have studied the factors affecting violence against women. I believe this is a widely studied topic in Bangladesh. Many researchers have studied this. So I would like to know particularly the summary one the what new you have found in your paper, and if you have found anything new in your paper that have not studied before, then I would suggest to modify your title so that people can attract to know more and need something new from it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my first question is to Ms. Shafa Taslim. If you are okay to answer that, even your voice condition.
This is Dr. Shoma, and Shafa is here. The labels have been replaced.
Sorry for mistake. So my question is somewhat from social perspective. Given your paper, it has been proved that there is a U-shaped curve between labor force participation and economic development. My question is, why might women, given social context of Bangladesh, why might women opt out from participating in labor force with time, with economic development? What is the reason behind it?
Okay.
Am I able to make my question clear, or should I repeat it?
You please repeat.
আচ্ছা, তাহলে আমি বাংলাতে ক্লিয়ার করে বলি। কোশ্চেনটা হচ্ছে যে ওমেন কেন হচ্ছে লেবার ফোর্স থেকে নিজেদেরকে আসলে অপ্ট আউট করতে পারে ইকোনমিক ডেভেলপমেন্টের সাথে। বাংলাদেশের সোশ্যাল কনটেক্সটে এটার কারণটা আসলে কি, এটা যদি একটু ব্যাখ্যা করি। ইকোনমিক ডেভেলপমেন্ট হচ্ছে আর ওমেনরা লেবার ফোর্স থেকে অপ্ট আউট করে যাচ্ছে, এটা কেন হতে পারে? এটা যদি
অপ্ট আউট কিছু সময়ের জন্য হচ্ছে, তারপরে আবার
আবার কিন্তু যাচ্ছে labor force.
So anyway, we'll I think if there are no any more questions, no. So then Najmu is like under the scanner today. So why don't you go take a go, and then I'll go to Sheila, and then finally to Dr. Sharma.
Thank you so much for all of these questions. I'd like to start from the question number 3. That what is the new contribution? Mostly the 5,000 sample size. So whenever we are talking about the data, we don't see these kind of big data. We got this sample size of more than 5,000, and these are categorized by economic, controlling behavior, psychological. So whenever we categorize these things and we try to find out the relations between the factors, for example, their age, their financial institution, their registered earnings and other things. So we found that few things are commonly new in this space, that are like whenever these financial institutions are why these financial institutions are mostly related with it, and why the women's age are mostly concerning these factors. Like in early marriages, we see the violence is most likely high, but whenever they are in more than 30 or 32 years old, so the degree of violation is decreased, and other factors are most likely mostly contributed in this paper. And first question was about the migration, and in this sector we found that this migration might be held mostly in their working places. So in their working places, we see the degree of violation is highest in their husband house. But in workplaces, the amount might not be that much significant, but this could be. So wherever they are migrated, that could be one place is the culture of that working places, their socioeconomic conditions, and other factors might be one thing that could emphasize on it. So this migration could be related with their working place and where they are working in that place. And the second question might be was why the psychological factors. Mostly we see that women are less prone to report their violence against women. So we see that almost 72% women are not that much aware of it, and they don't like to speak about it. So this awareness is needed. So whenever they might they are thinking of, and they take it taken for granted that their husband will take the decisions, then they will control the family. But in somewhere where is their rights, where they need to inform, so their awareness is not that much clear for themselves. In that sense, psychologically they might be less powerful, or they are lagging behind. So whenever they are mostly more aware of their rights, and whenever they get more empowered, they might raise their voice. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Sheila, are you there?
Yeah.
If you could respond to the question to you.
So yeah, thank you for that observation on the causation between causation between migration and intimate partner violence. One might anticipate that migration can lead to economic stress, and that might be a determinant of intimate partner violence, or even the disruption of social support. So, if a woman moves from one place to another, she might experience that her social networks are no longer with her, or her friends and family are far away. So, one might anticipate that this could be a reason for intimate partner violence, or even the change in the gender roles, that she just with her husband. So in my paper, I do find that though I have not included any variable on migration, I do find that the married women, other than the daughter-in-law, are more prone to intimate partner violence. Moreover, when it comes to social support, so I have included the variables like mobile usage or internet usage that might talk in the direction of social networks. So I do find that the more she's connected by her phone, the less she's prone to these violences. Now, so these are some mechanisms by which I can talk from that angle, but I've not included any variable on of migration. But yeah, indirectly, my paper can be a part of that conversation too. Thank you for that comment.
Thank you. And Dr. Shaw?
Yes, please. Thank you for your question. Sorry. First of all, I want to tell you that the economic development and women's empowerment, there is a bi-directional relationship. That means economic development causes women's empowerment. And on the other side, women's empowerment also causes economic development. So you can ask me questions how this is possible. So economic development causes women's empowerment by reducing poverty. The women are getting access of education, and they are involved in so many economic activities with accessing education. And economic development, the Bangladesh government introduced so many microfinance institutions to enroll women in many economic activities to enhance their productivity, to reduce their poverty. And even I think you know the global gender gap index, the Bangladesh score of the global gender gap index, and you can see that the Bangladesh women's performance is better in a political empowerment in a role. But still, we lag behind in the economic opportunities and economic opportunities. But Bangladesh is doing great in educational attainment and health and survival role. So how Bangladesh is women getting doing great in health and survival and education. It is a social index. No, Bangladesh women and girls are doing great in primary education, and they are getting access in secondary and the tertiary access education also. And fertility rate and maternal mortality rate are increased, or decreased now. So all activities of women are increasing. We can feel that. So and you asked me that asked the question why women are opting in economic development. After a certain period of time, when women are getting married or getting give a child after delivery, they took some break from 6 months or 8 months for maternity leave. And in some developed countries, but I know some government also getting leave of parental leave also after delivery. So it's not a great issue. Women are getting doing great. Women are getting access by accessing education, so many educational activities. So I think economic development and women's empowerment are bi-directionally correlated.
Okay. Thank you. I think to just add to that, it could be that as a country embarks on its process of development, women who have been traditionally, neglected, they find it very challenging to enter the process of development. And but once the momentum goes on, they probably, they acquire education, they acquire their skills, and they find it, that they are now more capacitated to enter. So probably that could also be an answer to what you asked. So thank you very much to all of you for sitting here so patiently and going through this. It's been a very, very interesting session, and we have had some very important takeaways. Just a few words, and then I'll give away these certificates, and then we can split. So, one important thread that I see through all the papers that were presented today is the critical importance of education, right? I mean, as I said in his papers, as little as 6 years, and you're able to put a check on domestic violence, right? Or those deeply entrenched cultural values, those you can penetrate through education. Now, আমি ছিলাম culprit? আচ্ছা, sorry. So, so if education is so important, how has Bangladesh done in education? We've done great, actually. We've done marvelously, and we are often quoted in the international arena. It's not only education, we've done very well on many counts ever since the 1970s. We talk about maternal mortality rate, we talk about children being born assisted by a skilled birth attendant, gender parity in the education sector. We've done very well. And in more recent times, and Dr. Shoma just mentioned about the global gender gap index. The latest global gender gap index says Bangladesh is the most gender equal country in South Asia. And that is for the 9th consecutive time. So, these numbers are good. They look good. That's no mean achievement. And we are proud to be able to make those achievements. But at the same time, these numbers should not push us back so that we become complacent. Because if we probe a little bit more into this global gender gap index, for instance, it is largely driven by the political empowerment index. For more than half of our history, we've been ruled by women. And that is what is feeding into that high rank that we. But if you look at the other sub indices, say the education index or the economic participation and opportunities index, or you look at the health and survival index, we do really poor. In fact, we are one of the worst in the world. So those are actually areas of concern. In fact, just last week, the sample vital registration statistics for 2022 that showed that 2 out of every 3 women are NEET. NEET mane hoche not in education, employment, or training, right? So can you imagine 66% of the women are NEET? And what is more sad is that this age group, 20 to 24, more than 50% of the people, of the girls in this age group, are married before the age of 18, which is the legal age for marriage. These girls should be in the classroom, they should be preparing to enter the workforce, but they are sitting in their homes. So this is a huge opportunity lost for us, and we need to be able to tap that. Now, as I just mentioned, that education is key, and we all know that. And we have improved our enrollment in primary and secondary schools. এখন প্রত্যেক একটা ছেলের জন্য একজনের বেশি মেয়ে আছে. We've crossed that. We surpassed the boys. But achieving gender equality means more than getting girls into the classroom. There are some latent drivers of discrimination. For instance, from our early childhood, we observe the inherent discrimination that takes place in the household. It's the ladies who are looking after the household work, who are the caregivers, and it's the men who are taking care of the responsibilities out of the house. Or, just plain say things like women don't make good political leaders, women don't make good business women. Uh, these kind of things, they sort of instill uh, into our children a sense, they have a preconceived notions. And when they grow up to be adults, young adults like you and old people like me, we still harbor those preconceived notions, right? So the problem is there. These hidden forces which perpetuate discrimination, we have to tackle that. And how do we do that? Not only by teaching in the classroom, but also by practicing it in our regular daily interactions in the interface. Okay. It's very easy for me to say it. It's easier said than done. But once we are able to do it, we have an entire generation of people who view women differently, who view women from a different perspective. And then that has a snowballing effect, right? Now, when we talk of gender, we have to bear in mind that women play an extremely important role of ensuring a constant supply of economically active workers, right? There's no way that we can deny it. But in doing so, women face what in the literature it's termed as motherhood employment penalty, that you have to sacrifice your career for looking after your kids who will eventually enter the workforce. Now, so obviously the participation in the labor force of women, it goes down, and women become dependent on their male caregivers, and eventually they might also fall into the trap of feminization of poverty. So the fact that women take on a disproportionately huge role in caregiving, it's very well known. Everybody knows it. And there is a need for prioritizing investment in caregiving. That is also very well known. But unfortunately, our policymakers fail to see caregiving as a social good. It's sometimes caregiving is just left to the backbenches. It's relegated to the background. Women alone cannot bring about changes in social norms. Has to be done by the society. It has to be a whole of society approach. Sons, husbands, men, families, communities, everybody has to come together to break the gender stereotypes. We need to address the unequal power relations between men and women by breaking the social norms and also the attitudes that harbor, that foster that inequality. I just want to quote a survey that was done by BIGD recently on 10,000 respondents. এবং এই সার্ভেটা ছিল যে they were questioning the respondents about their views, যে মহিলারা যদি চাকরি করে, what is your view? Or if they have become leaders, what is your view? Or what is their view about women holding property? And most of them, they said they're fine with women working. So that's good. But the catch is they are fine with working women within the confines of their home, right? And what is even more unfortunate is that this response was irrespective of whether you're educated or not educated, right? Even educated women and men said that it's okay for women to work as long as they are within their homes. And they also said that men should be prioritized over women in terms of when you're talking about employment. So you see, this patriarchal mindset is not only of men, it's also for women. Women also have a patriarchal mindset. So I've talked a lot about mindset. Actually, there are many ways that, pathways to tackle gender inequality, but because of time, I stuck to this. But the point is that in order to bring about gender equality, we really have to do something that relieves the drudgery that women have every day, and also it should have a social acceptance. এরকম না যে ও এখন তো ওনার কোনো কাজই নাই, ও তো মেয়ে বাচ্চা যায় ডে কেয়ারে। It's not like that, you know. If you have to have a level playing field, then you have to have a level set of responsibilities as well. So unless and until we are able to take care of that, and I believe that it's going to be a very strong, very powerful path to achieve gender equality, right? With that, I think we call an end to the session. But before that, I have to give out these um, certificates to our participants. So, এটা কি বলবো, এখানে আসবো না এখান থেকে? Okay, all right. So the first one is for Shafa. আরেকটা? Okay. And the second one is for SM Najmus Saki. And the third one is for Dr. Somadhar. Okay. Sheila, I wish I could give you a certificate, but I guess you'll get a soft copy.